Evening. It is actually. Wonderful evening in summer. Anyway, I've been threatening to do this for some time, so I'm going to finally set up the PG-1000, which is this. So this is the programmer for your D-50 or D-550, if you can right now. Okay, great unit. There are a couple of computer simulations of this, but it's always nicer to have all the buttons and faders in front of you, especially if you can get a nice, well looked after unit, which I was lucky to do with this one. So the PG-1000 itself has pretty much a fader for every one of the parameters you can configure on a D-50. Okay, that's what all these knobs, faders and buttons are. Some of them are duplicated because of different menu items, but in general there's one fader there for doing everything you need to do. And each one of those faders typically is a 0 to 128 in value, so 0 being at the bottom, 128 being at the top. Right. Around the back of the unit we've got the traditional Roland logo, and then we've got what looks like four MIDI sockets. Okay, so typical configuration is the in, out and through, and then there's this fourth one which is the parameter in socket. So this is how the unit communicates with the D-50. Okay, the parameter in is how the D-50 sends its data to this unit itself. It doesn't do it through the standard in, out and through sockets. And then to finish off the back panel, what we have is we have a 9V DC, which is the power supply would have come with the unit, and then a simple on and off switch. Okay, that's the unit itself. I am actually going to. I've taken the D-50 out of the studio so that I can actually show you it here, because the lighting in the studio at the moment is not brilliant for doing this sort of filming, whereas the lighting in this room is much better. Okay, so that's how we're going to do that. So first of all, we have to think about how do we set the D-50 up. So there's two configurations for setting the D-50 up in my mind. There are a number of other configurations drawn out in different books, but there are two primary configurations. One I call the out configuration, one I call the in configuration. I'm going to set up the in configuration, and I'll show you what that configuration consists of in a sec. So this is where I'm going to do a bit of Tony Hart and do some drawing, because I think it's the easiest way to actually convey this. So this is the out configuration, the configuration I'm not going to set up this evening. Okay, so I'm going to say this is my D-50, and it has the standard in, out and through sockets on it. I'm also going to draw my PG-1000 above it, and again that has an in, an out and a through, and it also has this special parameter in socket. I'm then going to draw the source that I'm trying to control with my D-50. So in this case I'm going to call it a JV2080, and that has a standard in, out and through too. Okay, so what I've got is I've got my prime keyboard, I've got my sound unit I'm trying to control, and I've got my programmer. So in order to stitch these together, we need another piece of equipment, and that piece of equipment is either a MIDI merge or a MIDI through unit. Right? They're not as popular, as easy to find nowadays as they used to be, but it really is quite important. Okay, and my particular MIDI merge unit has 4 ins. I'm going to draw 2 of that and a number of outs. So I'm going to draw 2 outs and 2 ins. Okay, represented by the eyes. So now we need to wire it up. So the first wire we do is from the PG-1000 to the D-50, so the PG-1000 can control it and send signals. That comes out of the out, call it cable 1, and into the in. Right, PG-1000 can now send information to the D-50. Now we have to be able to send information back from the D50 to the PG-1000. So we have a cable coming out of the out and into one of the ins on the D50 on the MIDI merge unit. Call that cable 2. So now this is sending information there, and out of one of the outs here we send another cable, call that cable 3. So now I'm sending information from my D50 via the MIDI merge to my PG-1000. Now I also want to be able to control my JV280. So I've got the cable that runs from my out to my MIDI merge unit. I'm going to draw a fourth cable that comes out of there and into my in socket there. Okay, so this is what I call my out configuration. Okay, D50 can talk to the PG-1000, PG-1000 can talk to the D50, D50 can control the JV280. Now I'm going to draw my in configuration. I'm going to change the diagram ever so slightly. So I'm going to draw the D50 over here. Okay, and I'm going to draw my controller keyboard over here, and I'm going to use my called Kronos. Now both these keyboards will have standard in, out and through, although the Kronos does have USB capability, in, out and through on the D50. Okay, I'm also going to draw the PG-1000 over here. Okay, like so, exactly the same setup as the other one. But this time I'm going to swap the MIDI merge unit around. Okay, so I'm going to draw the MIDI merge unit here, and instead of the ins being at the bottom, I'm going to draw the ins at the top and the outs at the bottom. So the purpose of this configuration is to allow me to control the D50 from a different source, but also have the D50 talk to the PG-1000. Just fill in the right boxes here. So in this configuration, the way I need to be able to control this from this. So the first thing I do is I take a cable out of my out and into one of the MIDI ins. I'll call that cable 1. So now I'm sending information to my MIDI merge unit. The next thing I need to do is I need to take that information out of my MIDI merge unit through one of the outs and into the D50, cable 2. So now I can control my Kronos, my D50 from my Kronos via the MIDI merge unit. Now I want to be able to send information from my D50 to my programmer. So I come out of the out and into the parameter in for that cable 3. So now I can send information to my PG-1000. The last piece of configuration is how do I get it back from the PG-1000. I come out of the out and into the in on the MIDI merge unit. So let's walk through the logic. Kronos can talk to control D50. Kronos sends signal via the out through the MIDI merge unit into the D50. D50 needs to send control information to the PG-1000, comes out of the out into the parameter in. PG-1000 needs to send information back to the D50, out of the out, through the MIDI merge unit into the D50 in. This is my in configuration, and that's the configuration I'm going to set up. So before I start setting up, I'm going to introduce you to this. So this is a MIDI merge unit. It's not very big, as you can see from my hand. This is an ESI micro merge. Okay. This has 4 MIDI ins on one side. Where is it? Yeah, 4 MIDI ins and 1 MIDI out, and some LEDs there that tell you which channel is active. Okay, so this will transmit all 16 channels and merges those 4 inputs into one output. Right? But we're going to use this for this exercise. So for the purpose of this demonstration, I've taken the Roland D-50 out of the studio and I've put the PG-1000 on top of it, so you can see all the rear ports of the keyboard and the programmer. Right? And then obviously the micro merge is sitting to one side, and I'll show you how we wire the things up. So First thing is I want to be able to send messages from my keyboard. So MIDI out to my PG-1000. Okay, as I said, it's parameter in. Okay, I can now send messages from here to the programmer. The next thing I want to do is I want to be able to send messages back from the programmer to the keyboard. So that goes into the MIDI out, and it goes into one of the MIDI ins on my MIDI merge unit. So I'm going to put it into MIDI 1. But I still need to get those messages back to the D50. So on the MIDI out, like so, I then wire that into the MIDI in on the keyboard. Alright, so now I've completed the circuit. I can send messages from the keyboard to the programmer, back from the programmer via the merge unit to the keyboard. The last thing I need to do, and I haven't got on the keyboard out to be able to show you this, but I need to obviously be able to control this keyboard from another source. So pretend the other end of this cable is plugged into another keyboard. That then goes into another socket on my merge unit like so. So I can now control that keyboard from another keyboard. Okay, that's the basic setup of the in setup. So as you can see, I've now got the PG-1000 back in the studio. So obviously you can't see the wire around the back, but you can see it's plugged in. And I've got a patch on the keyboard here. I'm going to go back for something that's like that. So that's a Profit patch from the Voice Crystal 5 card set. So if I play that, as you can hear in real time, you're making adjustments. To how that patch sounds. This is the power of the editing tool. The power of the editing tool is to be able to make those adjustments real time and play them on here. And if you don't like what you hear, rather than just save it back, you can just change it. So there you go, PG-1000 plumbed into the rig. Probably many nights of playing with this one now. I've actually got it set up again. And if I'm brutally honest, it wasn't as hard as I remember it the first time. Anyway, if you've got a PG-1000, enjoy.